Buddy, this look at Three Eye Atlas facts versus conspiracies. This is November 1st, 2025. Here's what we absolutely know right now it's interstellar. It just passed Perihelion. Three Eye Atlas, the third confirmed interstellar visitor after Oumuamua and Borisov. The Perihelion hit October 29th through the 30th at about 1.36 astronomical units. Remember, an astronomical unit is the distance between the Earth and the Sun. It's going to pass within 1.8 astronomical units on December 19th, and there's no threat to the Earth. No matter what you're hearing, the trajectory we're seeing, there's no threat to the Earth. So Mars and solar observatory coverage did happen. The European Space Agency confirmed that ExoMars TGO and Mars Express observed the comet October 1st through 7th during the Mars pass. That was at 0.19 astronomical units. That's public. Like they're saying, hey, we did observe it. That's great news. Still waiting on the data, but there's also this thing behind the sun. It brightened. It turned blue. Soho goes and stereo tracked a rapid brightening and a strong gas dominated emission, giving a bluish cast. Probably from the ions being charged by the solar wind, the coronagraph rocket clips that we're seeing. That's standard comic physics. So it was blocked by the sun. It had an ion tail. The solar wind hit it. That's probably what the blue's about. The James Webb Space Telescope chemistry showed that the CO2's through the roof. Near spec in James Webb found a CO2 dominated coma with CO2 water ratio at 8 to 1. That's very high versus solar system comets that we've seen. There's water, ice, dust. The outgassing is sunward. That's what we absolutely know. There has been non-gravitational acceleration measured when this first was announced. It really got my attention, but it was a small NGA, non-gravitational acceleration at perihelion. It's been reported, and Avi Loeb has summarized it. It's being validated how much we saw, but let me just say that non-gravitational acceleration in comets is normal due to asymmetric jets at perihelion. It does not imply engines. An order of magnitude getting figure that's being repeated right now is 0.02, which is probably in line. You got to understand, as the comet's getting closer to the sun, we expected that there would be a change, right? That's what perihelion does because of the solar wind. And usually that change means it off gases a lot. Well, those off gassing, that's sublimation. That means the ice is skipping the water phase and going straight to the vapor phase. And that can be like a 400 or 1,000 to 1 how much space it takes up. It acts like a jet, right? And sometimes that jet, based on the mass of the comet, it can give it non-gravitational acceleration or even a course change. And that's probably what we saw. But post-perihelion, it's emerging in pre-dawn Virgo through early to mid-November. As the elongation improves, practical observing coverage and images are going to be rolling out from amateurs and pros. We still won't get our best optics until early December, but we're going to get plenty of looks at it until then. And what we're going to see is where it's at, how fast it's going, or what direction it's going. We may not see some really good optics of the actual comet, but we're going to see some important trajectory stuff, right? I think we're staring at a hyperactive, CO2 rich interstellar comet that got real active near the sun exactly when the dust measurements were tough and the coronagraphs were king. The blue gas is not Starship LEDs, okay? It's from the perihelion. So the non-gravitational acceleration gets a little complicated because of the mass loss. There's talk about that it lost maybe 1/6 of its mass, and they're seeing if the math works with that. If it was 33 billion tons and it lost 1/6 of its mass, and we know what the jets are, does that agree with the non-gravitational acceleration that we saw? If it's kind of like a rocket effect. If we can infer a large fractional mass loss over months, it can be consistent with the strong asymmetric CO2 jet. So this NGA could be natural. It could be explained. so these tails show up on comets when it gets close to the sun. That's the best way that I can put it. And up until this point, I was making a big deal about the secrecy coming out of ESA and NASA, but they're starting to talk a little bit more. They're starting to show some data. They've confirmed that they did get this data. They're processing it. There's been some stuff released. That's why we're getting some of this data, and there's been contextual updates. So I think it's just going to get better. I think that the talk about the cover up is probably not founded here, and it probably does have something to do with the government shutdown. But there's still some things that are weird, right? Like the volatile mix of a lot of nickel without the iron, the activity far from the sun when it was pretty cold, the CO2 dominance, a byproduct of water coming out, and that makes it unusual comet, especially from a thermal profile. And it broadens what we think interstellar ice could look like. There's still debate about whether some of the dust ice screens are doing some odd light scattering tricks, and we're watching that. We're going to see what that means and what it looked like pre-Perihelion and post-Perihelion, because that tells a big part of the story. And so just understand we're also, like I said, we're doing some really tight looks at the math and does it make sense? The non-gravitational acceleration, the orders of magnitude, the mass loss, does all the math make sense? If it makes sense, look, they're obviously going to come out and say, hey, it makes sense. It was natural. If it doesn't, he'll be waving a big flag and making sure everybody hears him. Now, so some of the biggest conspiracies out there right now is that it has an engine. It's an alien engine. It's an engineered internal power source, and the blue color is the proof of that. Well, non-gravitational acceleration is common in comets. I'll admit, when I first heard about the NGA, it got my attention. I went, wow. But then, I did some research and I understood that actually some NGA is common because as the comet gets closer to the sun, the sublimation starts to happen. Remember, sublimation is this phase change that skips a phase, and it's a tremendous release of energy. And also, like this much water, it turns into 1,000 times of that same volume, and it's just a super jet, right? So the NGA could be related to that sublimation as it got closer to the sun. The ion emission under a strong solar wind, that could have caused the blue, right? And also, let me just say this: if it was an engine, we'd see coherent directed delta V signatures. But right now, what we're seeing is consistent with gas jet physics. When I say that from the sublimation, like it's off gassing. That's what we're looking at is the cause, not from an artificial thruster. So right now, and I'm telling you, man, the math doesn't lie. We would clearly see this isn't just side jet sublimation. This is a thruster. We know what it looks like. So another conspiracy is that NASA's hiding Mars images. The high rise holdback is the smoking gun. But ESA has posted Mars Express results, at least contextually, and some data. U.S. coverage during the shutdown was uneven. But the Mars side observations are going to be public. Bureaucracy doesn't mean cover up, right? So it's I want to see it, and if it never shows up, that's going to be interesting. But I think that it's going to show up. I think it has to do with this damn government shutdown. Really bad timing. There's talk about that the blue jet is an exhaust nozzle because people think about their natural gas and how it, the corona of the flame looks blue, but this is gas swept up in the solar wind, and with the dust and the ions, it's probably very explainable. Especially all this started happening when it got close to the sun. We said that when we approached perihelion, we were going to see changes, and we saw changes. And now people are trying to say those changes are evidence that it's alien. So the other one that I've been fascinated with is the wow signal, right? Like it apparently come from reasonably close to the wow signal. And that is interesting. But when it was real interesting to me, I thought that it was going to make another transmission. I thought there'd be a validation point. And remember, with SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, says that they want a confirmation. They want a second event in order to call it significant. They do not consider one event significant. The wow signal never repeated from August 15th, 1977 to now. It never repeated. There was no validation. There was no confirmation. It could have been a bug in crawling on a circuit board. We don't know. We don't know. So we just didn't. We don't have the validation points from SETI. We don't have Three Eye Atlas. Never broadcasted that. I thought it was going to. I really did. I thought if that's true, it's going to ping again, or there's going to be something that we pick up on. Because now that's closer, man. We're watching. We're listening. We're not seeing anything. There's the talk about the orbits in retrograde and 5 degrees off the ecliptic plane, and that is a big one. That, like, wow, what's the chances? Because if you were going to do a Voyager style flyby, you'd come in at the angle it did retrograde. That's how you would do it. So you can't help but look at that and go, wow, somebody did that, right? But guess what? The 400-pound gorilla in the room is coincidences do happen. And in 3D space, it is possible. And it's interesting to discuss, but it's not evidence of steering. We just haven't seen evidence of steering. And like I said, this whole blue thing where they're saying that it turning blue is evidence that it's alien ship. But the problem with that is that we can explain the blue. It's coronagraph physics. And James Webb Space Telescope chemistry observations have confirmed that. So right now we consider the Interstellar Comet. It reached perihelion October 29th. It's reappearing pre-dawn in Virgo. It has a CO2 dominated coma. We've detected water, ice. It has some sonar jets. There's a blue ion emission that happened during this conjunction. That's natural. There's been a small non-gravitational acceleration observed, not big enough to really alarm, but that math is still being validated. It was detected at perihelion, and it's likely the sublimation off the side jets of that happens at perihelion from the sun. Right, it's flying by the sun. The solar wind's hitting it that way, and it's just maybe them jets just kicked in just enough to give a little bit. That happens with comets. I'll say again, we said things were going to get interesting at perihelion, and they did. We're going to get better and better optics on it, and hopefully the information will be released in a manner that we can digest it and put a lot of this to rest, so we can focus on the science, because that's what we want to do. We want to learn from this. We want to understand, so that if something unusual ever does happen, we can differentiate between this and something alien. Because look, I'm a show me guy. We've got hard James Webb Space Telescope spectra saying CO2 is running the show with 3i Atlas. We got coronagraph video that looks wild, but it screams, an ion tail in a stiff solar wind to anyone that's seen a few of these comets. And yeah, there's some extra push at perihelion. Comets do that when they burp hard on one side. If it starts executing clean directed burns that you can't fit with these jets, I'll change my tune. But today it's a weird comet. It's interstellar, and it is a blast to study.